right, let's do it. Let's dive in.
All right. Authority.
Okay. Authority. Yes. I was on a walk with a friend last night, and it was really funny because I was sharing with him how when I was 12 years old, my mother bought me a shirt that said questions authority. Oh, man.
Is that okay? So that's a great way to bring this up. Is that part of your upbringing? Is your family like that, or is your family very respectful of authority?
Well, that's an interesting question. My entire family are leaders, and so there's a good balance in there. They're respectful of authority, but they're also discerning when it comes to authority. And I mean, I just grew up always questioning things because I was sincerely curious. Who makes the rules? Who gets to decide? How is authority created? Who originates authority? Or where does it originate from? So those were questions I always had. I mean, I grew up in a Catholic home, and I remember my parents telling me all about Jesus, and I was like, and how God was Jesus's dad is the way that they explained that to me. And I was like, oh, cool. So who is God's dad?
Yeah.
I was so little. I was about 7 years old, and they just all looked at me kind of dumbfounded, without having any idea how to answer that question from a child.
Like, she's not supposed to ask that. Get him right in the book.
And I don't think they had ever contemplated it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, my experience was, and when we were talking about this earlier, I didn't even think we would go into it this way, but I was very much, I don't want to say punished necessarily, but I definitely was reprimanded if I kind of questioned authority. I never was given explanations to all the questions I had. It just very much was like, do what I say, have respect for that. Well, I'm just like you. I was way too curious and way too honest for anybody who was raising me. Just like, because you do, because that's what I said, because that's what you're supposed to do, because that's who they are.
Right. Because I said so is the biggest one that I always had a problem with. Because so many things didn't sit right with me, and I didn't know what to do about that because it was so juxtaposed my own internal truth or knowing. Even at that young age, certain things just didn't feel right. And I had no idea how to change them. I had no idea how to get answers to the questions that I was asking, because I recognized that most of the adults I was asking didn't even have answers to those questions. And so that's where those, we get placated because I said so. And that's why you do it. And man, a lot of different things were coming in around authority for me. And what makes somebody listen to and follow somebody else's authority? And what was coming through is fascinating. Confidence, conviction, a certain degree of factual information, and the ability to influence other people to listen to and follow that framework, that agreement, to agree to that framework. And that's where we start to get into collective agreements and how we've created meaning for so many things in our world, because who gets to determine what the meaning is? An individual who felt very strong and convicted in the meaning that they had created, who then influenced many other people to agree with that same meaning, which is really beautiful because it gives us also the power to change meanings and values that we place on things and create something new. And we can create something new for ourselves in our own lives too. So another thing that was coming through was having the power and the authority to orbit into and out of new realities. So if you are done having a dimensional experience, you can decide that you no longer want to orbit in that realm anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, as you say that, almost what they're showing me is, and this definitely plays into starting to understand yourself as a multidimensional being, but it's like looking outside at a crowd of people, but the crowd of people are all those multidimensional parts of yourself. They're all your roles, all your personalities, all of your everything, and saying, okay, flock of sheep, here's where we're going now. You're down here, we're going over here. You with me or you not, right? And let parts of yourself stay behind that no longer resonate with moving forward into that new reality.
Right. And this is where we get into creating new rules for our experience. Because everything that's functioning in the universe at the micro and the macro level are functioning according to collective agreements that we have made. So we agree upon time as an example, but it's an elusive, abstract concept that is really not grounded into anything except for an agreement, which gives us the power to change those collective agreements and move in new directions to create new things. The more convicted and empowered and decided you are in your multidimensional experience, in your reality, the more all of the other fragments and aspects will start to align to you. And so kind of speaking to what you were saying, where everything else starts to shift and some of those old pieces will phase out of your reality and new things will start to phase in. This is a complete reversal of how we're taught to do things too, because we're usually taught to look outside, to look to what does everybody else want and need? What does the world need, especially when it comes to service? What do I need to do for... So it's reversing that and bringing it back in and deciding, what do I actually need in my multidimensional experience? What do I choose to place meaning and value in? What is important to me? And standing in that and allowing all of the other elements and aspects of self to realign to that intention.
Yeah, and they're bringing me back to a little bit of what we were talking to yesterday, and taking all of those questions that you may have that are kind of what if statements, or wouldn't it be nice if statements, and the example they're giving me is wouldn't it be nice if when so-and-so reacted to me in this way, it actually meant I am about to receive 10 new clients, or a brand new place to live, or a vacation that comes out of nowhere, or whatever. And so that's what we're saying is, really, there are no rules. There's only rules that we create. And even the rules and the laws of the universe, we have played a part in creating. So nothing is set in stone. It's just a matter of, do these rules work for me? Do they not? Should I keep them? Should I let them go? And what do I want to replace them with? And not replacing them as with the intention of, oh, these are these hardcore rules that I need to follow, but these are my guidelines for continuing liberation in my life.
I like that too. Yeah, because I think we all have that base foundation, right? And so what they're showing me now too is, even looking at the solar system and how things function and operate in the solar system, it's the result of an empowered vision. And the things that we see crystallized in the physical dimension are things, they're stories that we have fixed our attention on, stories that we have fixed our attention on. So if we can begin to fix our attention on new stories, empowering stories, loving stories, joyful stories, healthy stories, then we can start to crystallize a new reality. And that works at every single level of creation. So this can work for better or for worse, right? So a lot of the natural disasters and things that we see happening in the world right now are the result of a victim consciousness that created something that it needed to become victim of. So these are stories that we're playing, and those things happen to help us raise our awareness. That's, well, I mean, really, in a sense, everything is here to help us raise our awareness, self-awareness of who and what we are, how powerful we are, how quickly we can shift and change directions and create new things if we will choose to fix our attention on something different and new.
It's as if what you see appear in your physical reality is when you've literally written a book and it's complete, and this is the publication of the book. So you have to remember that in order to speed things up in your reality, and feel as if you have total authority over them, is that this, what's showing up here, it's the last step. It's the final culmination of everything. Just like, okay, they're also bringing me to the example of legislature and when they put new laws in place. Well, someone creates the idea, then they write up the whole document for it, then they have to pass it around and have meetings with all these people, then it goes to court and blah, 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 blah. Then it's passed, and then we see it as actual reality, as actual truth. And so I'm bringing that up because one of the little bullet points I was called to write up was how authority affects your ability to have complete power over your wealth, your finances, your relationships, and everything else.
Well, there's also a way to transcend all of that. And this is stuff that I don't share unless it's in the inner circle, to be frank. Because it's a high level of power and a lot of responsibility that comes with having access to that power. But so what they're bringing me to is making a decision and staying committed to that decision energetically, physically, mentally, emotionally. So what happens is somebody had that idea, and then because they were committed to that vision, to that idea, they started to act in alignment with that vision and take the necessary steps to crystallize it into form. That will flow, the action will flow naturally once you have made the decision of what you want. You have envisioned what you want with crystal clarity to the point where you can just breathe it in, taste it, feel it, touch it, hear it, viscerally experience it in your being. And you stay committed to that, because anytime you start to retract, you get into worry, doubt, fear, you start to pull back some of that momentum so that the universe, because it's always giving us a direct response, it's going to do the same exact thing. It's going to pull back. So the more decided and committed you can stay to that vision, the quicker it will be, while also not being attached to it. And that's a big piece too. We spoke to that earlier, letting go. And letting go to me just looks like being present. If it's not with you in the present moment, if it's not happening right now, you don't need to have it happening in your unconscious, in your subconscious. Most people miss so much of what's going on in their life because they're living in a story that's not even playing out in their present moment. So spiritual authority, let's speak to that. What does that feel like for you? Because that's mostly the authority that's where the meat is.
Yeah. Spiritual authority, to me, what they're saying is just the cause and the effect of your reality, basically. I have no more authority over other beings than they do myself, but rather I have complete authority over my reality on all dimensional levels. In the spiritual community, there's definitely, when I think of authority, I hate that word, to be honest with you. I really do. It just, and that's okay, because that's an unconscious part of myself that I still have not shifted through, and I don't feel the need to right now, I suppose. it just really relates me to a lot of the 3D world. But in spirituality, I think where you're headed is like light. And I don't want to use good and bad, but like good authority and bad authority, and discerning between the two in regards to spirituality and the spiritual community. Because, and that's something I wrote down as we were talking of, is how to have authority or over authority figures, basically. So basically what I want to say is, use discernment with everyone and everything. Like, no longer are you part of the herd of sheep. No longer are you sleeping and unconscious, following the crowd, or, oh, that person wrote this book and it was a New York Times bestseller. Well, it must be, like, I must need to read it. That must be the next spiritual truth. That must be where we're headed. That must be it. That's the thing. Sure, you are my leader, right? Like, and I think we still see so much of that in the spiritual community. I get it with people who are waking up, but especially for those of you who are watching, you're not unconscious. Like, you're very self-aware, and you're very aware, and you're very awakened spiritually, mentally, emotionally to what's going on. And so with that, it's just, no one, not even spirituality, not even spiritual laws, not even spiritual truths, not even spiritual thought processes, none of that should have authority over your life or your being.
I agree with that completely. And I love that you're just speaking to like your next guru or the next spiritual truth or the thing that you're tuning into. And I mean, I read a lot, a lot. And with every piece of material I read, there's aspects of it that I recognize as truth immediately. And there's always aspects that you can tell are highly biased, designed to create a specific influence. And if you're not paying attention, it can be so easy to buy into somebody else who is in their authority. And so this comes to sovereignty too now, is not allowing yourself to be influenced by even somebody else who is in authority when it is not in alignment with your truth and what you know to be true within yourself. You are the ultimate authority in your experience at all times. So it's very valuable to begin trusting that, to begin knowing that. And to just, for me, it's just about being curious and being so open to learning, so open to discovering. And it's so easy to just go, okay, this is great. I can add this to my toolkit. I can add this to my practice. I can add this to my being. And this piece, I'm just going to leave it because it doesn't resonate. It doesn't hold true for me. I've experienced something more expanded than this. And just letting that be the case with almost all things, because that's how it's going to be. You're not, in my experience, there's never been one thing that I've ever read where I have taken the entire thing as some form of ultimate truth. And truth in and of itself is constantly evolving and changing. So it's also important to check in with yourself and say, what is my truth? What do I want? What is important to me? In standing for yourself.
100%. That's so key right there. Truth is always evolving, expanding, opening up, because it's going to open up the more we open up our consciousness. And so the same thing we held as true for thousands and thousands of years one day could be completely different the next, and that's okay. So that's where a lot of what we've been speaking to for weeks now about being fluid comes in, being grounded in fluidity, being grounded in your consciousness is what they're saying. Really, we don't have a need for authority. We have a call for sovereignty, and that's showing up. I'm really called to say that if you are not in alignment with what you desire in your relationships, in your finances, in your business, in your health, in your environment, with your family, with your friends, whatever area it is that you're focusing on shifting, I guarantee there's some sense of there being authority over you in scenarios.
Yes. Yes, 100%. And that's what decides the final outcome. And this is where decisiveness and commitment are key, because it's some certain at some certain point there's not space for doubt anymore. There's not space for self-doubt, especially if you want to expand and grow something. Because then you become very easy to influence by the energy, by other people, by situations and circumstances, by somebody else who is powerful in their truth, in their decision, in their conviction. And in some cases that can cause people to shrink back or feel intimidated or weak or vulnerable, or lacking in their own personal authority. So it's really about stepping into that fully for yourself and not letting any other element influence you. And we spoke to this a bit earlier, and I'm still playing around with this and trying to master it in different ways through different experiments, so to speak, about becoming energetically sovereign. And so there's this idea, and this links back into quantum physics, that what happens in one place happens everywhere. So they did an experiment where they took two photons, which are light particles. It's what we're made up of. And they put them in particle accelerators 14 miles away from each other. And they did something to this particle over here without doing it to this one. And they were at this 14-mile distance. And this one had the same reaction as this one. And in some cases, even before they even did anything, because the intention was already flowing. And so there's this idea that in order to influence, you have to also be open to being influenced. And something that I've begun to tap into, and I'm still working on mastering it, I am by no means perfect at this, there is a space, there is a dimensional experience where you are so sovereign, you are so present, you are so in your personal power and authority that nothing outside of you has the ability to directly influence your choice, to so they're showing me interference patterns. So to come in and create interference in your, because here's what happens in relationships with entanglements and attachments. Somebody will be having a certain way of thinking, a story going, an intention for the relationship. Somebody else might be having something different going on. Those two different flows of energy can cross and intersect and bump into each other and create interference patterns that feel like an entanglement, and it literally becomes a quantum entanglement of energy because the people are focused on two totally different things. And so whoever is stronger and more steady in their intention is the one who's going to win out, so to speak, in the final outcome of things. So whoever is most decided, whoever is most strong and stable in their will, in their authority, is the one who's going to be least impacted by that interference pattern, while it might really deeply influence somebody else. Yeah, and that's where we get the highs and the lows and the waves, and we feel those really deep attachments. We don't know how to be in our sovereignty. We don't know how to not let things affect us in our experience. And the more I zero in on this, degree of choice, really being at choice, ultimate choice at all times, is to be so solid in presence, absolute and utter presence. If it's not going on right now, and I'm not intentionally going into a meditation or a visualization to project my consciousness somewhere else, then I am so laser focused right here, right now. In that way, like you mentioned earlier, they want us to stay conscious, and that's what that is. Fully aware in the moment and not being split and fragmented in our energy and being in multiple places at the same time. And then you're always really at ultimate choice in your situation because you're conscious that you are at choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Two things that are coming up with you saying that. The first one is, and this goes into something I'm going to go into personally on like my own video where I can just like yap on about it for an hour. But this is where, along with staying fully conscious, fully present in the moment, what I'm being called to share right now, this is how you can get rid of a lot of bodily aches and ailments, is because the parts of your body are connected to certain parts of your consciousness, obviously. And so if you're fully present in the moment, you don't have that push and that pull on those, not talking about major diseases or something. There's different ways to get rid of those things, but just by being fully present, conscious in the moment, you may notice, oh my God, I don't have that back pain all of a sudden, or those knee aches or this headache or something, because your motion is staying so strong and fiercely present in one moment. A lot of those things come from the fact that you're also connecting yourself in certain moments to the future and the past and the what ifs and the this and that and then the whatever. So that was coming through. The other thing that was coming through is because I've definitely come to a certain point of mastery of that with certain relationships of mine, where and how I did that, I'm not going to go into sharing like the how behind that, but really at the end of the day, what it is I just stopped believing them. Whatever it was that they had going on that was showing me that they don't want what I want, or they're going to push back or whatever, I just stopped believing them. And then everything shifted in my favor, so to speak. And so that's what they're saying for all parts of your reality, is stop believing them. Stop believing whoever it is, whatever story it is, whatever number it is, whatever headline it is, whatever it is, just stop believing it. And that's how you have more authority, more influence over others, other beings, other ways of being. You just don't believe it anymore.
Yes. That's really powerful. And I think so this is linking in for me to letting go and empowering your story. So starting to affirm and empower and give energy to the story that you want to see manifest. And when you're not so for me in relationship, this has been really pivotal. So first I started to apply to intimate relationships what I was applying to friendships, right? Because in intimate relationships, everybody's got projections going on. There's unconsciousness going on. There's everybody's got their own story, their own intention for what the outcome is going to be. There's attachments. There's all kinds of stuff up in those intimate experiences. And so the first thing I started doing was looking at, well, how would I respond to this if it were just a friend that I cared deeply about? And so I started kind of transferring that energy over to the relationship, and that helped to relieve the attachments, expectations, all of that. And now, if I'm not directly interacting with an individual, I'm aware. So I'm aware of when somebody enters my field, always, at all times. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter how near or far they are. I'm always aware when somebody enters into my field. So I stay aware of the dynamic or the story that they have playing out, but immediately I detach from it and I let go. So the more I become aware of that, okay, that's an interesting awareness to have. That's an interesting psychic read to be having in this moment. That's interesting information. I'm kind of curious what must be going on that this person is experiencing this as their story. But in detaching myself from the information that I'm getting as much as possible, and certainly not carrying it with me forward into my next moment, into my life, into my ability to be fully present and connected to whatever it is that I'm doing in my reality in that moment. And that's, they're showing me with the body stuff, those aches and those pains are fixed patterns, which are just stories that we tell over and over and over again. And so where we're stuck on a story, or we're stuck about an incident that occurred somewhere over here, or we're in fear about what might happen over here, and we're fixated on that, that starts to manifest itself as tension, as resistance, as pain in the physical body. So it's just a story that is starting to stubbornly fix itself into place. But the more you can let those stories go, and like you're saying, not believe them, but just be super present, just go, okay, that's a story. But the one place that has become very relevant for me is that when I get that input from my environment, when I get that feedback, I don't ignore it, and but I also don't feed it. So I become aware of it, but then I choose to let it go. So I realize that I have some of those awarenesses to support me, and they serve a purpose for me to have awareness when I'm interacting with said person. And I'm not just going in blindly, but I don't attach to that story and make it mean something for me in my experience. I just stay aware of it. So there's that fine line in between ignoring and feeding the energy. So it's just that holding that awareness of it, being conscious of it, sometimes tucking it away for later use if necessary. But either way, not having it as a blind spot and not being attached to it, in which case I would be empowering it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what they're saying to me right now is your ability to believe that someone else's experience can shift in an instant is your ability to believe in your reality shifting or instantly manifesting.
Yeah, that's profound. And that's coming back to standing strong in your authority and empowering the story. So it's like, it is like you were saying yesterday, putting the blinders on and not empowering any other vision or any other story except for the one that you want to see manifest. And holding true to that, being really crystal clear and decisive and empowered in that. And there is a degree of empowerment that comes from that, especially as you start to see things manifesting and being created in your experience. Every time that happens, you become more solid, more secure, more strengthened, more powerful, more in your own personal authority, because you know that you can make things shift just like this. Because when we shift, our entire hologram shifts to reflect that back to us. And something that I've noticed too is that I don't even really have to do much work out here anymore. I just do the work in here. And so the only thing I'm focusing on is my decision, my vision, what I want to see materialize. So I don't need to go do all of this anymore. I just clearly state what I want. But me stating what I want automatically shifts everything out here.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Authority.
So, well, let me see. I think what we're starting to see now is where we have had strong leaders, strong institutions that have set a standard, that have set the precedent for the way that things are going to go or the way that things should be. And we see this crumbling. This has been happening for a very long time. But what we're stepping into now are sovereign, self-led individuals. So the authority is coming back to the individual, and that is imperative for our species to evolve. That is so imperative. Every single individual being in their sovereign, creative authority and power in their experience. And that's where we're going to see new things starting to happen on the planet. New ways of living and being, new types of communities and sustainability and free energy use. When people finally start to inhabit that part of themselves and recognize how much authority they actually do have and how that translates into the physical, tangible world. Because I still I'm feeling some fear about stepping all the way into that.
I was just picking that up too. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it goes against so many rules and all of what we've been taught. What do you mean I can craft something entirely new? I can exist in a dimension in which I create the rules by which my universe, my reality functions, how it shows up, what I phase in and what I phase out, and standing fully in that place and no longer putting that outside of ourselves. And so this is what does distinguish people who lead from people who follow. Everybody has the power and the capacity and the potential to step all the way into this. It's just that some choose to and some choose not to.
Right. Yeah. And it's almost coming to a point where, well, obviously you have a choice, but that choice is becoming thinner and thinner on whether or not you get to still be a non-sovereign being, if you will. It's like there's this waiting period of you're used to everything being so fixed outside of you. And so that's where people are used to getting their sense of stability or grounding. And when all that starts to shift and move and they realize that there's just this wavering that happens because they don't know where to get that sense from. They don't know where to, and of course it comes from rebuilding an inner foundation and reconnecting with that inside of yourself. But there is a little bit of a wavering period with that. What they're reminding me of too is there's this video I've seen on YouTube or somewhere a long time ago where these people rescued these dogs that had been inside of a laboratory their entire life. They'd never seen daylight. They'd never seen grass. They just were in cages for experiments, basically. So they rescued these dogs, and then they showed up to a big fenced-in grass field for them. And when they opened up each dog's cage one by one, the dogs were just so timid. They were scared at first. They were like, what is this? Is this okay? Am I allowed to, like, what do I do? And then eventually, they get kind of let out, and then they start sniffing around. They're super happy, and it's the most heartwarming, melting thing you've ever seen. That's kind of how it is with what we're speaking to as well. Is you got to step out little by little and understand that you're a sovereign being, that you have the authority, that you can decide. You can decide what everything means. You can decide how to relate. You can decide what to change, what to shift, and nothing is bigger than you. Nothing is as big as it actually seems. That's what we're here to tell you. And nothing is as big as it actually seems. No corporation, no structure, no monument, no type of weather, no institute of money, no client, no idea, no person. Nothing is bigger than you or stronger than you or better than you. I mean, ground in that. Like, let yourself go into meditation with that for 5 or 10 minutes. Just sit with that and feel that vibration through your being. So parts of you that are not willing to accept this will start to understand little by little.
And the thing that they're taking me to now is that power and authority comes from realizing that all of that is you, and that's what makes you so big. And there's an energy too around, is it right or wrong to have that much personal authority? Is it right or wrong to have that much power to command things, to direct things, to influence things? Will I be punished if I do so? So there's a lot of that old fear energy that's still surrounding that, around, is it actually safe for me to go there? And if I go there, will something bad happen to me because I'm the word they're saying is disobeying. Disobeying really a storyline is all that it is.
Right.
You know, I mean, if you get down to the bare bones of it, it's not, it's a story.
Right. It's just a story. And they're even saying, I mean, will I be punished for questioning my own inner authority, my personal authority, my own rules? So there's kind of that internal thing as well. And it's up to you to feel into and decide and own up to the fact that that does not have to be true. You're only going to be punished if you punish yourself. And if you're stuck in that loophole, the easiest way to get out of it is to just feel into where you're recognizing that with your heart. Because all it is fear trying to protect you. Even if it comes in the form of self-punishment, it's okay. And that's where energy work comes in. That's where magic work comes in. That's where channeling comes in. That's where, you know, all of that comes in.
Yeah, and having a support system and trust. And it's funny because the image that they're showing me is like, so the way I see it is that here I am in my individuated self, everything out here into infinity and beyond that I can't even, I mean, I can do my best to envision the ongoing spiral of creation, but, you know, my mind has its limitations. And so, I mean, I can feel that, I can know that in my inner being, I can sense that knowing. But then I see all of that out there being me. And so if I decide to be afraid, then I am going to reflect that back to me. If I decide to be at peace, then I am going to reflect that back to me. So it's just a matter of when I choose all of me, because it is so unconditionally loving, goes, okay, this is what you want to experience. I'm going to reflect that back to you. So punishment and all of that is just, like you were saying, it's because you're doing it to yourself. And this is where people say, step out of your own way. Because it is such a direct response from reality that we are getting to the way that we are feeling, thinking, believing, and being. That you can kind of, if you take a step back, or if you go deep into meditation and you go, okay, what do I want my whole hologram, my whole reality to reflect back to me? What is my truth in this moment? What do I actually want to experience? And then let your hologram reflect that back to you. So when we get into, like, there's some power outside of us that is dictating or determining what we get to have or what we don't get to have, or if we're good enough to have it or not good enough to have it. We are going to receive the experience that we create in our mind, whatever that may be. So if that is the story that we're telling, that we have to earn something in order to create it, that we have to become something more in order to create, that we have to abide by a certain set of rules, then that's going to be our experience of reality, because that's a story that we're perpetuating.
Right.
But we can choose to tune into a different story, a different experience, and then that will be our experience of reality, because it is us. And so why would you punish yourself? Why would you make yourself do X, Y, and Z in order to create the thing that you want? And so those are things you can start to tune into. Why would you withhold from yourself? Why would you, whatever the thing is that comes up, whatever it is that you're creating, and why would an unconditionally loving source do that is an even bigger question.
Right.
If you want to dig into that. Unconditional love means there are zero conditions on that love. Right. And I think that that can also be a scary thing too, for some people to really look at. You mean I could be anyone, I could be anything, I could be powerful, I could, align to my truth in its fullness. And it would still be okay, and I would still be able to create powerfully what it is that I want in my reality. And I would be unconditionally loved and supported by my entire creation.
That is just that easy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just those awarenesses. So they're showing me too how almost until you have the visceral experience or download of the awareness itself, and until you calibrate to it physically, or until you have a very personal experience with that awareness, it only penetrates so deeply. It only resonates to a certain degree at a certain point. It is when you have the experience of that for yourself that it's most valuable. And that's where activations are really fucking powerful and important. And that's why we do activations, because it helps to calibrate people to those awarenesses, but they still come to the awareness on their own, but you are just calibrating the energy. You are just activating it, and empowering it to manifest, materialize quicker, so that people can awaken quicker, so that people can self-discover quicker, so that people can step into their creative power and authority quicker. Because when you step fully into that authority, there is freedom. And I believe that everybody is ultimately seeking freedom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I agree. So, something you can do on a very simple, fun, playful level is see where you can break your own rules. Just play with something small, something innocent, something that's, meaningless, and be a rebel towards your own authority and your own rules of, you can't do that. No, it's not time for that. You can't. And just start to break those. So you break free, and you get that momentum going. You get that knowledge going, and you start to ground in that even more. And this is what they're bringing me to. Is understanding that this is not something you need to fight anymore. Because how much of this do we still see in the, in the real world, so to speak, of people fighting authority? There's this uprising towards authority in all many different levels and many different ways, which is all well and good, because that's seeing the breakdown of those paradigms. But for you as an individual, even if you are wrapped up in those sorts of things, no longer is it necessary to fight. Just let them collapse in their own way. And the same with your own authority and sovereignty. You don't need to fight. It's not a war. Again, it's not more powerful than you are when you stand in your simple freedom and liberated nature of sovereignty.
Yeah, and something I've really learned over the past several years of my life is when I'm silent and observant and tuned into the energy is when some of the moments when I'm the most powerful. So there's not any type of a charge or a trigger to move in any specific direction. It's just pure awareness. It's pure observation of what is. And then I have the powerful ability to influence and direct the energy from that space. So yeah, you don't need to fight. You do not need to go there. You can just shift your focus to something new. Unless I have to deal with that directly in my experience, like it gets zero of my attention. Unless it's like a specific instance that comes up. But I don't have that come up with, not now with authority. But there are moments where I'm called to stand in mine.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. They're bringing you to the body right now too, as well, of just like click yourself into having authority. I have authority over my body, because how many of us still feel powerless over our bodies?
And especially with all the stuff around ascension symptoms, because yes, there's moments when we're going to need to rest and calibrate and nourish our bodies, but we are not victim to those things. We know what we need to do to change and adapt and adjust. And yeah, we do have absolute authority over our body and our experience with our body, as with any other element. in our experience. And so some people don't know that they can go there, and they don't know that it's okay to go there because of ideals, preset notions around the way that things are or should be, or what's okay, what's accepted, what's allowed, what's not allowed. Realizing that we get to determine that. Somebody, somewhere, at some point, determined that. Another person, another being determined this set of rules and standards, which many people still live by and claim as their own, even though they're not necessarily their own. It's a truth that was handed down from another person. And so my invitation to you is to look within and find what your own truth is. And if some of those truths from that person still resonate and that feels right to you, then that's great. But to never take 100% of anything that you're receiving from the outside as your truth, especially without questioning it first, especially without exploring it. Everybody's got pieces to the puzzle, but only you know what is ultimately true and best and right for you. And it's safe to trust that even in the face of what we would consider, like they're saying, super authority figures, super powerful, strong leaders, people who seem like they know what the fuck they're doing. Because in my experience too, working with, big players, sometimes the bigger up you go, you realize you're like, they don't know what they're doing. They're just fucking convicted about what they're doing. And that's what's creating the influence.
Yeah.
They're sure about the thing that they're doing, even if it's completely,
Yeah.
And then a whole bunch of other people start following it. In a lot of cases, blindly following it, because I can guarantee you this, for most people, if you sit down with them and you ask them about the things that they're convicted about, they can't really give you a solid why. This is why I believe what I believe. This is why I'm convicted about what I'm convicted about. This is why this is the experience that I've had that has led me into this place. Somewhere in that lineage, you'll find that it originated from another source somewhere outside of the self. And so this is an invitation to go back to the source within and ask your questions there, do your explorations there, and stay open to everything out here. Be curious about everything out here, but formulate your own truth.
Yep.
Play
with it.
Yeah.
Don't formulate a truth off of the current truths. Like, just play with it.
Oh, that was fun when I started, with magic, right? Dabbling and playing around with like what some of the rules are.
Yeah.
Even in the realm of magic. I'm like, okay, well, you say this is a rule. I'm going to see if I can do things differently. And in small ways, with things that weren't, in really big ways too. And with important things. Let's be real. Because I just play with it as much as I can, wherever I can, like testing those boundaries and those limitations of what is possible and how to figure out, how else will we figure out if we can do that if we don't try, if we don't play with it, if we don't explore, if we don't go, okay, well, I'm going to start infusing a new meaning into this experience. What meaning do I want to give it? Does it have to be the same old meaning that everybody else has given it for aeons of time? And see what happens, see what shifts, and it's funny too, because you'll get, you'll constantly be improving upon the quality of your manifestations, right? How many times have you manifested something that is kind of, it's a mixed bag, right? You've got like half the manifestation that you wanted and the other half has just gone to shit, and you're like, how did that happen? And so then you have to master those aspects of self and kind of figure that out and tweak it out and smooth it out so that you're constantly, consistently manifesting what you truly desire instead of unconsciously manifesting what you don't want. But that's how you learn, as you play. You get in the sandbox and you play and you figure it out.
Yeah, it's just an experiment. Be your own little funky, mad, happy scientist. Just play around. And if you weren't fully convicted with something today, well, decide you're going to be fully convicted tomorrow and keep playing. Keep that energy in motion. Don't stop yourself. Keep forward it's like reaching a goal, so to speak. Okay, well, I know I wasn't fully convicted there. Let me see why. Let's shift that energy. But tomorrow, I'm there. Tomorrow, 100%, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and I think that's the key too, is for most people getting clarity on what it is that they want. And I actually asked a friend this the other day, and it was good. I think I'll use it for myself. But it's like, if you had a magical genie show up in your experience and ask you if you could have anything in the whole world right now, no limitations, no questions asked, I'm going to literally hand it to you, what would you want?
Mm-hmm.
What would you want? And get ultra clear on what that is. Not what do you think you should want, not what does everybody else want you to want, what do you think is best for society and your family and all of this, but like, what do you actually want? What is most important and valuable to you? And then maybe what are some steps that you can start taking to create that thing? And get excited about the fact that you are a magical genie. And when you decide that you want to create something, the answer is always yes, every single freaking time. And that's where the excitement comes in, because there's no doubt that that thing is going to manifest. It's going to show up. It's going to be created.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So yeah, you are that.
Yep.
And Rumi said one time, ask all from yourself, because that's who you're asking from.
Yeah, exactly. It's just you talking to you. Yeah.
You talking to more you. It's what it is. You know, at the core, we are all of that, and we express differently to help one another to awaken and evolve and expand, and to see more possibilities, to observe more perspectives, to have more experiences together as one simultaneously.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So, moral of the story: be your own authority figure.
Yeah. Be the chooser. It's all up to you. You decide. You choose. Stand steady and firm in what is valuable and important to you, regardless of appearances. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
All right, love bug.
All right, my love.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Starting on November the 1st is the Inner Circle. If you want to learn more about joining our mastermind and sisterhood, you can visit jenniferneal.com or shaktisoul.com. We'll pop the links in the comments so that you can explore that. If you guys have any questions about it, feel free to reach out to either one of us privately or send us a direct message. Yeah, thank you guys for tuning in and hanging out with us and joining us. If you have questions or anything you need support with, just let us know.
And we'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place.
All right, sounds good.
Okay.
All right, bye.
Bye.